In world cultures, there have traditionally been many different groupings of religious belief. Those different religious philosophies were traditionally respected as academic differences in the pursuit of the same truth. Among those religions founded by those sent by God at different times, we can mention the doctrine of the Buddhas, which include Brahmanism, Vedantism, Buddhism, and the philosophy of Pythagoras. The doctrine of Sephirim, which includes Taoism, exorcisms, idolatry, and the occult sciences. The doctrine of the saints, which include Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, Islam. The doctrine of the genies, which include the Chinese mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. The doctrines of the sages, which include Confucius, Mencius. The theories of Socrates, Plato, etc. in Greece. Formerly, people of the world lacked transportation and therefore did not know each other. Nowadays, all parts of the world are explored. Humanity, knowing itself better, aspires to real peace. But because of the very multiplicity of religions, humanity does not always live in harmony. The previous two religions, Amnesty, saw the rise of Hinduism, Judaism, Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Islam, etc. The third Amnesty establishes a new great way for salvation, and the fundamental objective of the third Amnesty is the unity of all religions. It is so guided directly by God the Father. This new religion is called Gaodaism, or Daidao Ge Fodo, Great Way of the Third Amnesty. From 1921, His Holiness Ngô Văn Chiêu, a district head of the French administration in Cochinchina, was the first disciple to worship and receive messages from Supreme Being who rules all universe and cosmos. He received a vision of the divine eye, which is now the symbol for worship on all Gaodai altars. The eye is a universally potent symbol of the divine. On Christmas Eve 1925, Supreme Being identified himself to the first group of Gaodaist mediums, which included Their Holiness Pham Công Tác, Gao Quân Khu, Gao Hoàng Sang. These great souls were to play an essential role in the growing religion. November 1948, His Holiness Ho Phap Pham Công Tác said, "The Divine Master came to gather us together again, to unite us and to encourage us to live in peace like children in one large family. The prediction of His coming in the Christian gospel is fulfilled. I have other wandering sheep to bring back to the fold. This means that He has to unify many religions." The Holy See and the Holy City, as well as the original center of Gaodai religion, are in the province of Tainan, which is about 100 kilometers northwest of Saigon. The Tainan Holy See is 4 kilometers east of the provincial capital. The Holy See is the main site of the Great Divine Temple, the Holy Mother Temple, the main administrative offices, residences for high dignitaries, and other major facilities. As well as being a major center of pilgrimage, the Gaodais Holy See is also one of Vietnam's major tourist attractions. The presence of Holy See is 100 hectares. There are 12 gates to enter the Gaodai Holy See's presence. They are connected together by layers of concrete fences. The main gate was built in 1965. It faces west and it is few hundred meters right in front of the Great Divine Temple. The main gate, as well as other gates, has 3 entrances. The main entrance in the middle is opened only on major events. The other 2 entrances on the sides. This main gate is decorated with 2 dragons on top on both sides of the insignia of the Gaodai religion. It is the 3 ancient attributes. This emblem was placed on the top of the lotus-flowered throne, and it consists of the golden bowl, represents Buddhism, the Confucian Book of Spring and Autumn represents Confucianism, and the Taoist Duster of Purification represents Taoism. Below the top decoration is the official name of Gaodai religion, written in Vietnamese and Chinese characters. The Great Way of Third Amnesty. A row of Chinese words either side of the main portal. This poem is distinguished by the 2 characters that start each line. Gao and Dai, the name of the Supreme Being. A loose translation might run as follows. The Supreme Being in the highest offers the great way of harmony and equality towards democracy. Venerate God in the third amnesty, and enjoy together the rights of its freedom. After passing the main gate, we will see 3 precious towers. They are the tombs of the first 3 leaders of Gaodai religion. The front of the towers face to the Great Divine Temple. Standing in the front of the Tower Lekukeri, we would see the middle precious tower is the tomb of His Holiness Ho Fap Pham Gompak. To the left is the precious tower of His Holiness Thượng Pham Cao Quần Khu. To the right is the precious tower of His Holiness Thượng Son Cao Hoài Sang. Their Holiness Ho Fap, Thượng Pham, and Thượng Son are advanced spiritual beings who have obeyed the order of heaven to come down to the earth to establish the Gaodai religion. Therefore, the discarnation of their holiness is a spiritual and heavenly reward for souls who have completed the responsibilities they were given. The tombs look like octagonal towers. They are the symbol of the 8 Triagrams palace, representing the final unification with God at the 8-sided palace. On the top of each tower there mounted the Dharma precious staff. The top of the Ho Fap's tomb is decorated with the Ho Fap staff, Yang Masu, the pestle of the domination of demons. The top of the Thượng Pham's tomb is decorated with the fan of exteriorization. The top of the Thượng Son's tomb is decorated with the yin-yang sword. Turning your back, you will see the statue of Prince Gautama Siddhartha, the Sakyamuni Buddha, who lived in India more than 2,500 years ago, and at the age of 29, he left the luxury of his father's palace and his family in seeking for the Tao, quest for enlightenment, search of liberation, and a solution to the problem of human suffering. Prince Gautama Siddhartha did not return to his father's palace. For 6 years he led the life of ascetic, but abandoning these austerities, he finally sat beneath a Bodhi tree and made a vow not to move until he had attained the true liberation. So after 7 days of meditation, having fallen into a deep trance, after midnight at 1 o'clock, he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree and became a Buddha. He entered nirvana at the age of 80. The statue of Prince Gautama Siddhartha reminds the seekers that life is suffering, life is transitory, so one should practice the way, quest for enlightenment, spread the light of salvation, love, and compassion. Channa was a royal servant and head of the charioteer of Prince Gautama Siddhartha. The servant Channa followed Prince Gautama Siddhartha to a forest called Anupiya, but Siddhartha ordered Channa to go back to Siddhartha's parents, taking with him Gautama Siddhartha's gorgeous clothes as an article left by the departed. And Gautama Buddha went ahead for his search of the truth. Upon Siddhartha's enlightenment, Channa became disciple of Gautama Buddha. Channa was a Buddhist monk and eventually achieved arahanthood. From the sculpture of Channa toward the great divine temple is in the 9 heavenly steps stage, is in the middle. The 9 heavenly step stage is an octagonal pedestal with 9 levels representing 9 celestial or dimensions. It was painted in 3 colors representing 3 religions, with each color indicating one religion: red for Confucianism, blue for Taoism, and yellow for Buddhism. The 9 heavenly step stage is where the throne of lotus of high dignitaries such as Cardinals or equivalents, and above is a place for ceremonies before being places in the octagonal tombs. In Gaodai religion, God has opened the 9 celestial dimensions and established the palace of the 9 degrees of evolution in order to guide souls who begs for salvation. Seekers, believers who practice the way on this planet, that means after a lifetime of cultivating the way, upholding the virtues, do good works, and speak the words of the great way, when disincarnate, these true souls will return home to the Supreme Being. In front of the great divine temple is the great terrace of universal fraternity. To the left and right side of the terrace, there are the 2 grandstands painted white. Behind the white grandstands are 2 small natural forests. The terrace and grandstand are used by the Sacerdotal Council for organizing the great Gaudaya ceremonies and festivals. We might see thousands of believers, seekers, guests gathering here for observing the festival or ceremony during its procession. The Bodhi Tree stand behind the 9 heavenly steps stage. On 25th of June 1953, the revered missionary Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka, who was the most venerable Narada Thera, visited the Thailand Holy See and offered this Bodhi tree. Venerable Narada Thera was received warmly by His Holiness Phap Pham Komtak. A Bodhi tree planting ceremony was organized here on 11th of August 1955. It is noted that the Bodhi tree originally came from India, and it was sprouted from the original Bodhi tree, which Siddhartha Gautama is believed to have gained enlightenment after meditating under it for 49 days. Next to the Bodhi tree is the Holy See's banner pole. You will notice the carving of a dragon on the top of the banner pole. The base of the pole rests on a lotus flower. At the four corners of the pole, there are carvings of four and a unicorn. The best way to understand the Gaodai religion and the fusions of religious thought and practice it embodies is to experience the Gaodai Great Divine Temple. The Great Divine Temple faces west and has three parts. The Heavenly Union Palace is the perispirit of Gaodai religion. The Palace of the 9 degrees of evolution makes up its body, and the 8 Triagrams Palace represents its soul of Gaodai religion. The union of the soul and the body only occurs through the meditation of the perispirit, which is partly temporal and partly spiritual. So the Heavenly Union Palace acts as a link to unite the spiritual and the temporal. There are 2 towers at the front of the Great Divine Temple. The left tower is called the Thunder Drum Tower. The right tower is called the White Jade Bell Tower. Each tower has 6 stories. One will notice the card's figure on the level 2 of each tower. The statue on Thunder Drum Tower represents Very Venerable Sister Lam Hung Tan, the first female cardinal. Her Eminence Cardinal Lam Hung Tan is an incredibly generous soul and was a tireless worker for the religion. The statue on the White Jade Bell Tower represents the acting pope, Lei Wengzhong. This great soul is celebrated throughout the faith as he is one of the first Gaodai disciples who dedicated his life entirely to the new religion, the Third Universal Amnesty. After God called him, he committed his life entirely to the message of God the Father. His Greatness Lei Wengzhong led the Gaodai religion through many early difficulties. The towers that frame the front of the temple are for spiritual communication. On the level 4 of each tower there are. The left tower contains the great drum and is called the thunder drum. The right tower contains the great bell and is called the white jade bell. The sound of the thunder drum beating is the sound of thunder announcing to the world that there is a great way formed directly by God. The sound of the white jade bell ringing has the power to rouse sleeping souls as it rings out God's call to his children. Indeed, the great instruments that these towers house are sounded to alert both the spirit and earthly worlds of Gaodai's worship. They are also used on occasion while the ceremonies are taking place. In the 4th floor for the towers of our bas relief representations of flowers. Such flowers appear falling from the sky at sunrise. This relates to a dream experienced by a Chinese Zhou dynasty emperor, King Wu. The emperor asked his advisors to interpret this dream. They replied that it was a sign that a new way or religion would soon blossom. And indeed, soon after a master, Lao Tzu, did begin to disseminate a new way. This ancient story also serves to remind us of the coming of the new faith of Gaodaism. On the top of each tower there are mounted the iron walking stick, the wine gourd, and the basket of flowers. The wine gourd and the iron walking stick are the Dharma precious staff of Immortal Li Guai. In Gaodai's lore, it was revealed that the first acting Pope Lei Wengzhong was a reincarnation of this immortal soul. So this emblem emphasizes the connection of the acting Pope Lei Wengzhong with the Immortal Li Guai. The basket of flowers is the Dharma precious staff of Lam Nu, an assistant of Kuan Yin. In Gaodai religion, Lam Nu is reincarnated as Very Reverend Sister Lam Hung Tan, who was the first female cardinal. So this emblem emphasizes the connection of first female cardinal, Lam Hung Tan, with the assistant of Kuan Yin. On the 27th of January 1947, His Holiness Ho-Fap sanctified the statues of His Holiness Acting Pope Lê Vang Jum and Her Eminence Cardinal Hung Tan. He said, "From now on, the spirits of His Holiness Acting Pope Lê Vang Jum and Her Eminence Cardinal Hung Tan will be often present in front of the Great Divine Temple in order to welcome and guide human beings into the path of true religion, especially to guide the children of God who came to pray and worship the Supreme Being." The middle part of the facade, the area between the two towers, on the top is crowned with a representation of Maitreya Buddha sitting on a yellow tiger. Maitreya is the Buddha who represents the future. One day this Buddha, by the orders of God, will chair a great meeting, or the Dragonflower Assembly. At this meeting, all beings at all levels will be gathered. Those souls who are to become perfect beings will be tested. The idea that the Maitreya Buddha seated on a tiger is for remembering the Gaodai religion was found in the year of the tiger, 1926. The top floor at the middle is the eye, which is the divine eye or God's eye. The Supreme Being is acknowledged throughout the building by the symbol of the divine eye. This divine eye dominates the central part of the facade. Part of the potency as a symbol lies in the fact that it represents both the omniscience of the divine, it sees all, and the protectiveness of the divine. It is watching over us. The flag, which usually flies from a flagpole positioned over the second balcony, consists of 3 colors. Yellow represents the Buddhist, blue the Taoist, and red the Confucian. The flag also carries the name of the religion in Chinese and the divine eye, as well as the insignia of the religion. On the facade, directly under the 3 ancient attributes is the official name of the faith is carved with 6 characters in Vietnamese and Chinese. Great Way of the Third Amnesty. Either side of the name of the religion are 2 highly decorated Chinese characters. On the male side is the character Ren, love. We must spread human-heartedness everywhere. This human-heartedness will be used the great way to make the country stable and prosperous. The character on the female side of the temple is Yi, or righteousness. The third amnesty regards righteousness with great importance. It is needed to build and develop the nation. The 2 characters love and or righteousness, which represents the purpose of the Gaodai religion. The carvings on the edge of the balcony illustrate 8 categories of employment. Each one represents a particular story in the folklore of the Sino-Vietnamese world. They are pictures of the predecessors who had offered the great contribution to humanity, but brought together they represent the 8 noble professions. The first carving is of Hava. It represents agriculture. The second carving is Ngu Thuong. It represents farming. The third carving is of Thuan Nhang or Hu Sao, represents manufacturing. The fourth carving is a carving of Pham Lai, Tai Te. It represents commerce. The fifth carving of Kung Tung represents fishing. The sixth carving of Ban Ya Tu Ki represents forestry. The seventh carving of Sao Fu Hut Yo represents shepherding and livestock raising. The eighth carving is of Jiao Mai Tang. It represents scholarship and teaching education. These images representing the working world also suggest the coming together of all humanity for the Dragonflower Assembly. There are 4 columns that support the balcony. 2 of these columns are decorated with dragons, the other 2 with lotus flowers. The word for dragon in Vietnamese is lam. The word for flower is hoa, and these 2 words together, lam hoa, are the title of the great religious meeting. The Dragonflower Assembly, which can be likened to the Western concept of Judgment Day. In this way, the facade reminds adepts of their spiritual responsibilities in the face of the coming Judgment Day. You will notice the 2 carvings of the 2 mythical Hindu princes on either side of the 4 columns. On your right-hand side is Devang, the personification of good, a generous and tranquil figure. Opposite him on the left is Devu, his brother and the personification of evil, a wild and power-hungry man who is evil incarnated. Their father was a great Indian king who was preparing to resign his throne in order to seek enlightenment. Before he left, he was worried that Devu would cause trouble for his elder brother. The king contrived to send Devu away before conferring the throne on his gentleman son, Devang. On his return, Devu was incensed to find that he had been robbed of power and demanded that his demure brother abdicate the throne, stating that such a gentleman could not govern properly. As a respectful son, Devang sought out his father to ask his advice. By this time, the old king had retreated to the forests and had attained enlightenment. He shared the secret of karmic escape with his good son, who then joined him. Devu, having achieved all his earthly ambitions, became despotent and ruled badly. Eventually, he went in search of his father and brother. They offered him the chance for enlightenment, and by following their lead, Devu also became enlightened. There are many lessons to be learned from this famous story. It suggests that whether one is good or bad, so long as one sets one's heart and mind on the way, then all have the chance for enlightenment. Another moral of this tale, one that Gaodaism stress in their teachings, is that worldly cares such as prestige and status, even the majesty of kingship, pales into insignificance when enlightenment becomes available. Now that we have explained some significant in front and external features of the temple, we would like you to continue your tour inside the temple, starting from the main entrance. The steps in front of the temple, number 5. These represent the 5 levels of cultivation and attainment. Step 1, the way of humanity, represents basic human way of establishing good relations on earth. Step 2 refers to the way of the genus, that is the teaching and ethics derived from Greek, Egyptian, and Chinese mythologies. Step 3 is the level of the saints. is the way of the Western monotheistic traditions. The step 4 is the way of the Immortals, that is, which related to the quest of Taoist immortality. The step 5 represents the way of the Buddha. Inside the main entrance, you will notice a hand holding a spiritual scale of justice over the globe of the earth. This is the hand of God the Father, holding the scales to judge the merits and the failings of each human being, and this judgment will determine rewards and punishments in the afterlife. The scrolls on either side of the mural are a 2-lined poem which is distinguished by the first 2 characters, which read Hiep and Tang, the name of this part of the building, which roughly translated means, in union with Gaodai religion of all humanity, will be able to return to the perfect state of existence. The Supreme Being opens the Great Way. The divine beings of the 9 religious branches and the 3 religious traditions will attend the Dragonflower ceremony. As you pass inside, you come upon the place of spiritual calmness. This area is designed as a place to inspire tranquility and introspection. It is here that the hierarchy and adepts mentally prepare themselves before passing into the main temple. That is, worshippers must calm themselves down before the ceremony. The main feature of the place of spiritual calmness is the mural in front of you with the picture of the 3 saints. Declare the treaty between God and humanity. The 3 figures it depicts are saints through their spiritism connection with Gaodaism. The 3 saints are, in classical Chinese dress, one of the most famous of Vietnam's poet-prophets, Giang Trinh Nguyen Binh Kim, a highly respected Vietnamese poet and prophet of the 16th century. He writes in Chinese characters the agreement between God and humanity. In Western dress, the great French writer and mystic Victor Hugo, he acts in the spiritual realm as the foreign missionary of Gaodai religion. And in the modern Chinese dress, Sun Yat-sen, the founder of the First Chinese Republic. He holds an ink slab representative of Chinese culture. Together, they are writing the agreement between God and humanity for love and justice. These words appear in French: Dieu et humanité, amour et justice. This is in effect the contract of the Third Amnesty. This is in essence the Third Alliance, goals that each of us are expected to live up to. Holding to this agreement will lead to redemption. These saints you see before you provide spiritual guidance to the faith and help Gaodai spread the message of the Third Alliance between God and humanity. On the right and left sides of the place of spiritual calmness, there are stairs that lead to upper levels of the Heavenly Union Palace. From this level, you will have a stunning view of the main body of the temple. The balconies that extend from this level are the Heavenly Union Palace out into the temple, are used for worship during large ceremonies when the floor area is full. Turning back to this upper area of the Heavenly Union Palace, you will notice that it contains an altar which is dedicated to those members of the Heavenly Union Palace hierarchy who have disincarnated. They are Hofap, head of the legislative affairs, Thượng Phàm, leader of the spiritual realm, Thượng Sun, leader of the temporal realm, and the 12 lords of the zodiac. The low round table in front of this altar is where the musicians sit and play. Music is central to almost all Gaodaist ritual and worship. The top floor of the Heavenly Union Palace is the non-thinking palace. In the non-thinking palace, you will notice that there is a small god's altar. This floor is a place where dignitaries of the Heavenly Union Palace act as mediums between the Pope and the spiritual realm. Returning to the ground floor, you will notice that the main body of the temple is connected to the place of spiritual calmness by means of 2 arched portals. The left entrance is reserved for female, the right for men. When you enter the temple space, look behind you and you will see large semicircle steps. At the top of these steps are 3 statues standing upon lotus flower pedestals. The statue in the middle represents His Holiness Hofap Pham Công Thach. The Hofap is the one who unveils the mystery of the invisible and is the maintainer of the rules and laws of the new religion. He is actively involved in assuring that the religious rules and laws, which have become divine laws, are carried out in detail in order to keep the dignitaries and adepts free of the sufferings inflicted by the lords of karma. He also watches over the positive progress of the disciples in the way of God and guides all evolved souls to achieve the divine phase of the great spirits. He holds control over the legislative power both exoterically and esoterically. The Hofap presides at all sessions of the upper chamber of judgments. To the Hofap's right, that is to the spectator's left, is the statue of His Holiness Thượng Phàm Cao Quân Ku. Thượng Phàm is the representative of the Hofap in the formation of virtuous souls of the sacerdotal council. He acts as the leader of the spiritual realm and aids and directs souls in the process of spiritual and heavenly evolution. He reveals the heavenly voice to virtuous souls and guides them to the divine phase of the great spirits, while closing behind them the door of regression. He is simultaneously the president of the Hall of Defense and protector of all disciples. On the Hofap's left, that is to the spectator's right, is the statue of His Holiness Thượng Sun Cao Hoài Sang. He is the representation of the temporal realm to Hofap. Thượng Sun acts as leader of the temporal realm and has control of all the laws and rules which relate to the worldly life of all adepts to guide them out of the abyss of suffering. Whether it is a matter of pure souls experiencing their purgatory, or of souls in a state of evolution living out their karma, or preserved souls repenting of their evil actions, all these souls must be converted by the Thượng Sun in order to be able to cross the temporal stage. He is the president of the Hall of Accusation and is responsible for the public ministry linked with the religious tribunals. Behind the Hofap statue is the gold mysterious Chinese character carved on the red wall. This is the mysterious character Qi, vital breath or primal energy. Fundamentally, it means myth or essence. It can also mean breath, which makes it a central key to meditation and the sustaining breath of the cosmos. Qi is also food of the Immortals. It is the essence underlying and supporting all life. Standing in front of the character key, the Hofab is able to watch over each ceremony and gather spiritual forces that flow through the temple. So from this position, Hofab controls and directs the force of Ki during worship. Between these three representations runs a great long dark brown serpent. This tail is coiled around the base of the Tung Sun, and the body continues to wind about the base of the Tung Pham. This great cobra has 7 heads. At the feet of the Hofab, there are 4 heads, rising behind him another 3. These heads represent the 7 human passions. The 2 lowest heads embody anger and distress, above these hatred and the evil desires. These emotions are pushed down by the hands and feet of His Holiness Hofab, therefore they must be avoided. And the 3 heads that rise behind Holiness Hofab represent joy, love, and pleasure. These are good emotions that should be nurtured. Behind the statue of the Tung Sun hangs his banner. It has embroidery of characters Tung Sun in Chinese. Behind the statue of the Tung Pham hangs his banner. It has embroidery of characters Tung Pham in Chinese. On the pillars beside the key emblem are scrolled Chinese characters, which roughly translated means, a Buddha's teachings always depends on the times and circumstances in order to save human beings and help them practice the way. The gateway of the Tao and its power will usher in the period of the destruction of evil in order to protect the true way. Just beyond the 5-tiered pedestal is the area where the lower hierarchy of the Heavenly Union Palace worship. But already we have moved into the body of the Great Divine Temple, which is known as the Palace of 9 Degrees of the Evolution. Palace of 9 Degrees of the Evolution is not only the main part of the temple, but also represents the administrative and executive branch of the Gaodaism hierarchy and its 9 levels of organization. Principally, however, this 9-stepped building represents the 9 levels of evolution the disembodied soul must pass through before it can begin its journey to perfection. Inside the Great Divine Temple, there are 28 columns decorated with green and yellow dragon. The 28 columns represent the 28 stars, such as divine beings who descend from heaven to attend and assist the Supreme Being in the Great Divine Temple. You will notice the Palace of 9 Degrees of the Evolution is divided into 9 stepped levels, and each of the 9 levels as they rise through the temple is flanked by 2 columns. There are 18 in all. Each column is decorated with a green dragon. These descend from the roof, twisting through representations of clouds and flowers. Their mouths are open to spread the message of the way. Looking up, you will notice the 9 sky and star decorated cupolas. The ceiling rose decorations directly above you consist of 6 dragons intermeshed, 2 red, 2 green, and 2 yellow. They remind the community that God the Father travels the universe, born by 6 dragons, as He observes and encourages souls on their path to enlightenment. Above and to the side of that part of the roof over the balconies, you can see decorations in the roof which consists of carvings of a phoenix, a turtle, and a unicorn. Together with the dragons, these carvings represent 4 mythical creatures. The appearance of these creatures hails the coming of a good fortune. At the fifth column along, and at about half the height of a column, stand two pulpits. These are entered by a winding staircase, and it is from there the high dignitaries deliver sermons and direct rituals. Supporting the pulpits are 6 threads of cloud projected from the mouth of the dragons. The pulpit is constructed following the story of King Fo-yu of Chinese State War era. Confucius went to King Fo-yu to teach about human virtues and was imprisoned for 2 years. When released Confucius, King Fo-yu had 6 vows: not to see Confucius, not to listen to Confucius, not to smell Confucius, not to talk to Confucius, not to touch Confucius, and not to accept the return of Confucius. These vows correspond to the 6 secular senses from the 6 senses of human eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind. Because of his attitudes against moral virtues, his country subsequently sustained many natural disasters. King Fo-yu then set up a tower to pray to God. By order of God, Quan came to the tower, ordering King Fo-yu to invite Confucius to teach human moral virtues to people of the country. People should cultivate themselves and control their 6 senses in order to live in peace with each other. Therefore, the country was in peace and free of disasters. Upon reaching the 9th level of the Palace of 9 Degrees of the Evolution, you will see the 7 thrones laid out in 3 rows. The thrones are red with gold carvings. The first row contains only 1 throne. The remaining rows contain 3 each. The first seat, the high single throne, is for the Pope. Dragons are carved on the armrest of the throne for the Pope. The 3 behind are for the legislative cardinals. Venuses are carved on the armrest of the throne for the legislative cardinals. The final 3 for the remaining cardinals. Unicorns are carved on the armrest of the throne for the cardinals. On each side of the thrones is a set of 3 parasols, traditional symbols of respect and veneration. In front and on each side of the thrones is a set of 8 staff insignia, which are the precious objects or pikes of the 8 Taoist Immortals. In Taoist mythology, the 8 beings who as mortals followed the way and achieved the status of enlightened spirits. The halberds or military staffs are crowned with different symbols. Each one represents one of the 8 immortals. The symbols of these immortals are set on staffs to protect either side of the main altar. These staffs, one set on the male side, one on the female side, help protect the temple area. Resting on both ends and in between these staffs are 2 sets of 3 ceremonial parasols, traditional symbols of respect and veneration. After you have passed the 9th step, past the thrones, and past the staffs and parasols of the 8th Taoist Immortals, you will enter the 10th step, this area known as Spiritual Palace. The small area ends just before the main altar. This is the area in which official communication takes place between the religious mediums and the spiritual world. It is here that the names of newly elected officials of each hierarchy are placed before the divine beings for ratification. It is also in this area where significant problems facing the community are brought in the hope of divine advice will offer a solution. If you look above your head, you will notice that the ceiling rose contains representations of all the different methods of spiritualist communication. Between the spiritual palace area and the altar are 3 canopies in blue, red, and yellow. The central canopy contains statues of 8 of the most significant religious figures in Caodaism. They are arranged crossway into the 3 main religious traditions, and lengthways represent the 5 branches of religious attainment. You might remember that we outlined these in the 5 steps at the front of the temple. On the top row is a statue of the Sakyamuni Buddha, known also by his earthly name Gautama Siddhartha, this son of an Indian king, living in the 6th century BC, was the first to unveil the way that leads from earthly suffering and cycles of reincarnation to the paradise of nirvana. His life and work is celebrated by all Buddhists. Top row female side is Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is the foremost master of Taoism. His book, the Tao Te Ching, is a highly enigmatic and spiritual book that allows the complete operation of the way or natural order of life. Top row male side representing Confucianism is Confucius. This great master of Chinese religious and philosophical thought lived between 551 and 479. He edited and codified the 5 Chinese classics, in which all societal and familial behavior is codified. Next row down, female side, is Chinese Immortal Quan. She is celebrated as a great and supremely helpful spirit. When she heard the prayers and agonies of the world and turned back from the threshold of paradise in order to assist the world. In the middle of this row is the famous 7th century Chinese poet and immortal Li Po. Also known as the Homer of China, this great soul, both poet and prophet, appeared during early seances of the religion and helped to guide it during its formative period. Li Po was also responsible for directing the Hofap in the construction of the Great Divine Temple. On the male side is the Chinese god of war and loyalty, Quan. He is one of the most popular gods in China. His Holiness the Hofap revealed that Quan disincarnated, and then after spending 500 years of studying the way, was finally elevated to Buddhahood. In the middle of the second last row, representing the Western monotheisms, is the Lord Jesus Christ. Christ is thought of by Gaodaists as the most significant spiritual figure in the West. He represents all 3 major Western monotheisms: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. At the bottom center representing Jainism is Jiangxia. As the Chinese kingdom sank further into chaos at the time of the fall of the Shang dynasty, Prince Wu dreamed of a man who could save the empire. He eventually found the man, a humble fisherman who was in fact a scholar of great virtue, who had retired from the cares of the world. Noting the perilous state of the kingdom, Jiangxi accepted Prince Wu's invitation to become prime minister, and exercising his great virtue and helping to coordinate many spiritual forces helped to save the state. On the female side of the temple, the canopy is recessed to contain the statues of the 8 immortals. The 8 immortals are extremely popular in Asian society. They represent an ideal happiness and possess special magical abilities. They are also figures of great veneration, appearing in many myths as beings of high ethical standards, seeking revenge and playing tricks on those who deal corruptly and unfairly with the common people. They are very important in relation to the magical powers associated with the 8-sided Trigrams box. In order from left to right, upper to lower, the immortals are Lu Qingping, lived around 200 AD. His symbol is that of the whisk sword, which allows him invisibility when he wants to hide from evil spirits, and the ability to travel very quickly over vast spaces. According to communications from the spirit world, his greatness Caodaism is a reincarnation of this immortal. His statue flanks that of the Ho Fap in the temple. Ho Sing Ku, the immortal Lady Ho, was born during the 7th century. Her symbol is the lotus flower, meaning openness and wisdom. In Gaodaism, this immortal is reincarnated as Reverend Sister Hung Ho, who is also the daughter of Her Eminence Cardinal Lam Hung Tan. Hang Sing Ku was born in the 9th century AD. His symbol is the flute. Lu Tingpin initiated him into the secrets of Taoism while still a teenager. He probed the mysteries of heaven and masters the nature of the 5 elements. A much-loved immortal, Hang Sing Ku, represents the ideal of a contented person. Lang Sai Ho. His symbol is a basket of flowers associated with long life. It is revealed to Ho Fap that the Archbishop Tung Bin Tan, the Gaodaist who was charged by the Supreme Being with the task of building the universal globe that surmounts the temple's altar, was a reincarnation of this immortal soul. Sao Ku Chiu, who lived around 11th century AD. For the sake of meditation and for speeding through the universe, Sao always carries a pair of castanets upon which he raps out mystical rhythms. Li Te Kwai lived around 200 AD. In Gaodaist lore, it was revealed that the first acting Pope Tung Jungyuk was a reincarnation of this immortal soul. The male side tower of the temple not only is decorated with the statue of Tung Jungyuk, but that tower is surmounted by Li Te Kwai's symbol, the wine guard and the walking stick. Zheng Zhongli lived around 200 AD. His symbol is a fan of crane feathers, which he always carries, and with this fan, it is said he can revive the dead. The soul of this immortal, it was revealed to the Gaodai religion, was reincarnated as Gao Tung Pham. His statue flanks that of the Ho Fap in the temple. Jiang Kuo Lai lived during the 8th century AD and is remembered an old mountain hermit. He is said to ride backwards on a magical horse, that could carry him thousands of miles in minutes. His symbol is a bamboo musical instrument played with 2 sticks. The 8 Immortals back then have a special place in Gaodaism because during the formative period of the religion, all 8 came to impress on the founding dignitaries the need to keep to the way. Some of the 8 received specific orders from God the Father to help with the opening of the Third Great Religious Amnesty. The canopy on the male side of the altar has 7 figures recessed into it. These 7 saints belong to an epic period of Chinese history much celebrated throughout the Chinese world. The book that refers to them is called the Fen Shen Yang Yi, Canonization of the Deities. It is a seminal work of great religious significance, equivalent to Homer's Iliad for Greek civilization, or the Mahabharata for the Indian world. These 7 were bound to follow the instructions of their spiritual masters, who had asked them to help King Wu of Chao comes to vanquish King Chao of Shang. King Wu and his Prime Minister Jiang Xia moved to have these saints deified. However, these saints who have come from the mountains to help in the battle remain humble, and once the job is done, wish to return to their lives of Taoist meditation. The 7 saints are Kim Cha, who was the disciple of the Heavenly Master Outstanding Culture at the High Cloud Cave on the 5 Dragon Mountain. Na Jia, after being pregnant with Na Jia, the last 3 years and 6 months before any sign of birth. His mother gave birth to a fleshy ball, and the room filled with red light and smoke. Hearing this, his father rushed in with his sword ready and cut the ball in 2. A small, beautiful child rolled out onto the floor. He was already dressed in the accoutrements of divine spirituality, including a golden ring and a damask cape. Yang Jiang, a disciple of Jade Tripod, aged West Key during Sage, later the divine immortal of purity and decency. Li Dun was the imperial commander of Chen Tang, passed as well as the Taoist practitioner and disciple of the immortal woe-evading sage. He was charged with a number of magical powers. He had 3 sons, Kim Cha, Mop Jia, and Na Jia. Li Ho, a disciple of Heavenly Master of Divine Virtue, aged Jiang Xia, and Mop Jia, who was a disciple of the Immortal Universal Virtue at the White Crane Cave on the 9 Palace Mountain. Loi Chengbu, along the way to see the emperor. Ji Chang told his entourage to take cover for a vicious storm would soon appear. His troops thought this a strange request, for the sky were clear. Suddenly a great storm swept upon them, and great torrents of water poured from the sky. Then, as they braced themselves, a great thunderclap jarred heaven and hell. After the lightning strike, a strange light filled the darkened earth under the clouds. Ji Chang had a premonition of what this meant. Light like this means that the star of a great warrior has come into being. He sent his bewildered troops to search for the star. They found a small child. It was a most beautiful child, and Ji Chang adopted him. As his warriors were finding a family to billet the child with, so Ji Cheng could return and claim him in 7 years, a Taoist sage appeared. The sage asked if he could take the child as his disciple and return Ji Cheng at the appropriate time. They named the child Thunderbolt, and he was prepared by the sage to take a leading role in the upcoming battles in the kingdom. The hermit showed Li Ching-su how to rescue his adopted father from the emperor, who held him hostage for 7 years. Afterwards, in the search for some mystical power, the child found some magical apricots on a hillside and ate them. After this, he grew wings, his nose became long like a bird's, and he grew tusks while his eyes shone like mirrors. In this form, he was able to rescue his father and disperse his enemies by means of special powers. The last palace of the temple is the 8 Triagrams Palace. This divine section represents both the spirit and the soul of the new religion, where the palace of 9 degrees of the evolution is entrusted with the conversion of souls. The 8 Triagrams Palace is concerned with the salvation of souls. And as God the Father heads the 8 Triagrams Palace, it is He who is ultimately the spirit and soul of the new religion. The 2 yellow dragon columns underneath these altar canopies mark the beginning of the most holy area in the Great Divine Temple. The 8 Triagrams Palace is the place where all Gaodaists worship God, the Father, and the divine beings. Whenever a ceremony is held, this is where God the Father and the divine beings reside. There are 8 yellow dragon columns that surround the altar area. Heads of these dragons are facing the divine altar as though they are great spirits worshipping and accompanying God the Father. As its name suggests, the altar is fashioned with 8 sides. It raises from the ground on 12 steps. Each step becomes smaller as they ascend. There are 12 steps in reference to a divine message delivered by God, in which He revealed that the number 12 was His divine number. Around each side of this 8-sided altar are representations of the divine Trigrams of Gaodaism, although they are described on the uppermost steps of the tower of the 8 Triagrams Palace. They have been oriented in a special way in order to accommodate the spirits of the 8 Triagrams Palace. The Trigram is aligned with the male side of the temple, and Kung is aligned with the female side of the temple. The Trigram Dai is facing to the west. The east is the Trigram Jiang. The Trigram Li is facing to the north. The south is the Trigram Cam. On the northeast is the Trigram Dom. And the southeast is the Trigram Gang. At the center of the uppermost step is the central pillar, holding up this universal globe, which literally means the coming together of heaven and earth into a spherical shape. And its construction was conveyed to Archbishop Tai Bin Tun on 17th September 1926. You will notice on the front of this globe the constellation of the Big Dipper. God the Father revealed to the Gaodai religion that at the peak of this constellation, he could be found, and so it is above the constellation that the divine eye is placed, facing out towards the palace of 9 degrees of the evolution. In Gaodaist cosmology, there are 36 heavens, 3,000 worlds, 4 great cosmic regions, 72 planets. Planet Earth is number 68. Representing all these worlds and planets, there are 3,072 stars marked on the globe. On the left side of the temple, there is a small door in the globe. In here is a small lamp is kept continually alight. It represents the universal monad, and it is called the monad lamp, or first principle form from which the universe was created. The most significant of all Caodaism imagery is that of the great divine eye. The divine eye is also represented above the home altars of Gaodaism, and so in spirit and in pictorial representation. It is seen throughout the entire Gaodaism community. The eye is a universally potent symbol of the divine. The eye sees and it knows because it knows it is able to both protect us and check upon us. Many tourists liken the presence of the eye symbol to something similar found on the American $1 bill, a symbol that can be traced back to Masonic imagery. However, the mystic and universal symbolism of the divine eye extends throughout the religious history of the world. For the ancient Egyptians, there was the eye of Horus. For the Hindus, the third eye is Shiva. The Buddha is said to have received inner enlightenment through the celestial eye, and this permitted him to see the life of all beings simultaneously and gave him the knowledge of the chain of the fundamental forces of existence. All of these symbolized omniscient and divine attributes. The divine eye throughout history is also there to remind us that as God watches us, so too must we keep watch over ourselves in order to follow the ways of heaven. The divine eye is the main symbol of worship in Gaodai religion. A God's message on 25 February 1926 is proclaimed. The eye is the master of the heart. The two energy sources are the master. Energy is the spirit is God. God is me. Asosterically, for cultivation of spiritual energy, worshippers must train and concentrate their own eyes on the divine eye during worship. The altar table is marked by 8 white and silver dragons. Heads of the dragons are facing out. They are on positions of protecting and maintaining the solemnity of God's altar and the worshiping area. Underneath the universal globe are the names of the masters of the various religions traditions that the Gaodaists venerate. These are on tablets in Chinese characters. The layout of the altar of the Great Divine Temple is complex. The following illustration is the basis pattern of God's altar. On the altar, the following symbols are displayed. The divine eye. This is the single common characteristic of every Gaodai, God's altar. The divine eye became the main worshipping symbol of the Gaodai religion after His Holiness Ngo Bangchil, the first Gaodai disciple, was granted a vision at Phu Quoc, a small island in the Gulf of Siam, in 1921. The lamp symbolizes the universal monad, which is the eternal light of the universe. This lamp should remain constantly lit. The offerings represent the three essential elements of our constitution. Flowers and fruits represent matter, wine, the vital energy, and tea, the soul. The three essential elements of the universe are heaven, earth, and humanity. The heaven is essentially constituted by the sun, the moon, and the stars. The earth is essentially constituted by water, fire, and ether. Man is essentially constituted by matter, the vital essence, the soul. These offerings are best elements, mind, body, and spirit of each human being. The offering of their complete self to God. The two candles represent yin and yang. Yin, the passive female principle of the universe. Yang, the active male principle of the universe. Two candles are lit at the beginning of each ceremony. The yang side must be lit first. The 5 incense sticks represent 5 primary elements of the earth: fire, earth, metal, water, wood. The 5 incense sticks also represent the 5 different levels of spiritual development: purification, meditation, wisdom, superior universal knowledge, and karmic liberation. At the very back of the Bakwadai, on the ground, there is a trap door that leads down under the altar. This is the catacombs of the precious religious objects, 8 Trigrams catacombs. And here, reliquaries of the ashes of the great dignitaries, Cardinals, and their equivalents above. Each reliquary is inscribed with the name, birth, death, and day of cremation of the hierarchy member. At the present time, in the 8 Trigrams catacombs, there are 6 reliquaries of the ashes of His Holiness Cao Quan Ko, His Greatness Lei Vang Jung, Her Eminence Lam Hung Tan, His Greatness Ga Min Jung, His Eminence Tai Ta Tan, Eminence Ngap Jang Tan. Currently, this area is not open to the public. There are the daily worship, which is held in the Great Divine Temple in 4 sessions at 6 o'clock a.m., at noon, at 6 o'clock p.m., then at midnight. As for the divine worship celebrated in temples on the days of great ceremony, there is a more imposing ceremonial. There are two forms of ceremonies, major and minor. At the great divine temple and local temples, the major ceremonies are only held on significant anniversaries, and other ceremonies are thus called minor ceremonies. are 2 doors either side of the towers, directly under the bell tower and drum tower. Believers enter these 2 doors for attending ceremonies. On the side verandas at the apex of each arch, there are decorations with pictures of a pair of cranes flying in the sunlight, representing freedom from circular obligations and from sufferings. Cranes are seen as divine birds, connecting earth and the heavens. Cranes feature significantly in many tales of Chinese folklore, representing the connection of the earthly and spiritual realms. These apexes are also decorated with vines and grapes. These represent the 3 divisions of life. The vines and grape represent the matter of life, our body, vitality, the root of essence, and life. The grape juice represents the essence of life, mind, life force, the gateway of life, and death. The distilling of grape juice produces wine, which represents the soul or spirit. When all these treasures of our nature are unified, the adept can then break through the cycles of karma and reincarnation, and can be united with the divine. Throughout Gaodaist texts and architecture, the grape is a constant reminder of these 3 main elements of religious life and of the need to constantly work to bring them into harmony. There are 23 windows around the building, looking out upon the veranda. At the center is the divine eye, surrounded by a triangle that represents the 3 main arms of the faith: Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. The triangle is scale of justice. It is also representative of the Dharma of Gaodai religion. The geometric purity of the equilateral triangle serves to remind the hierarchy of the strictness of the teachings of the faith. There are 16 rays that emanate from this triangle. The 9 upper rays represent the 9 heavens to which the adept must look for guidance. The 7 rays underneath the triangle and radiating downward stand for the 7 passions: beatitude, anger, love, and its wild sense, hatred, distress, joy, and the evil desires, which a adept must learn to control. Lotus flowers symbolize purity. In addition to these designs, the arrangement of the lotus flowers, buds, and roots also symbolize the formation and development of the cosmos with reference to the numerical system of the Book of Changes, the work of divination based on rituals probably dating from 3000 BCE. There are 2 doors under the Tower of Saints, and the steps on either side of the 8 Triagrams palace. One might notice that each door is guarded by their own pair of yellow lion-like figures. After performing sanctification, a secret commissioning ceremony in front of these yellow lion-like figures, the Hofat replied, "These yellow lion-like figures are creatures of abundant health and strength. They represent and inspire the will needed by the adept in his or her battle to continually cultivate the way." The Hofat continued by saying that today the Holy Temple is finished, and God the Father has provided 8 yellow lion-like figures in order that no one should have the power to disturb the 8 Triagrams palace, or the palace of 9 degrees of the evolution. In this way, the yellow lion-like figures have been sent from heaven to protect the great divine temple. The tower that raises from the midpoint of the nave is the Tower of Saints. It consists of 3 levels. The first level is a square base rising out of the roof. Upon this base rests a round tower topped with an Islamic-shaped dome, painted with the map of the Earth, symbolizing our planet. The apex of this dome is surmounted by a figure that has the body of a horse and the head of a dragon. This dragon horse carries on its back a primordial 8 trigrams. It is organized based on opposing forces. It represents innate energies and the interaction of polar forces. This innate energy is the life energy you were born with. The pre-heaven 8 trigrams is still used today, primarily for selecting grave sites, but also as protection against harmful energies. This representation also includes a spirit sword, a symbol of karmic liberation. The dragon is depicted running to the west while its head turns back, looking back towards the east. This is symbolic of the way that originated in the east and is spreading to the west. The tower at the end of the Great Divine Temple is the 8 Triagrams tower. The roof is yellow, representing Buddhism. Again, from roof height, the tower is divided into 3 stories, each smaller than the lower. On the top of this tower is a carving of a lotus flower, and standing on the flower are statues of 3 of the most well-known Hindu gods. The 3 supreme gods, Hindu triad, are considered as 3 Buddhas, or Brahmanist Trinity and Gaudai religion. These Brahmanist Trinity are Brahma riding on a divine swan, who faces west. Brahma is a personification of the Absolute, the creator of the world. Brahma commands the first cycle of Manvatara. It's the cycle of creation, that is the cycle of innocence. Shiva riding on a cobra with 7 heads, who faces north. Shiva embodies both creative force and the idea of destruction. Shiva commands the second cycle, that is cycle of progress, or cycle of struggle and the destruction. Krishna riding on a water dragon, who faces south. Krishna is the preserver as well as a force of transcendent love. Krishna commands the third and the last cycle, that is the cycle of conservation, or the cycle of reproduction or renovation. Each of these Buddhas were commissioned by God, the Supreme Being, to watch over their particular realms. Thus, these Buddhas have become patrons and protectors of their respected areas. Additionally, the 3 Buddhas have received God's order to direct the 3 cycles. It's the cycle of creation, the cycle of struggle and the destruction, the cycle of renovation. That is the order and circulation of the universe. Behind the Great Divine Temple is the tomb of His Greatness Tung Jomnyuk. He was the first acting pope and is much celebrated. After God called him, he committed his life entirely to the message of the Supreme Being. He led the Gaudai religion during the difficult founding period. The tomb of His Greatness Tung Jomnyuk is also an octagonal tower. On the top of the tower is the swastika, a symbol of Buddhism. Next and behind the tomb of His Holiness Tung Jomnyuk is the row of offices in the U shape. The row of offices on the main side is the Oriental Outbuilding. This building is offices of the administrative dignitaries of the College of Men. The row of offices on the female side is called the Oriental Outbuilding. This building is offices of the administrative dignitaries of the College of Men. The row of offices on the female side is called the 3 male Cardinals. The precious tower with the yellow door is the tomb of His Eminence Cardinal Tai Bo Tan. The precious tower with the blue door is the tomb of the Eminence Cardinal Tung San Tan. The precious tower with the red door is the tomb of His Eminence Cardinal Ngap Nhung Tan. On the side of the occidental outbuilding are the tombs of the 3 female cardinals. The tallest precious tower is the tomb of Her Eminence Nguyen Hung Hiu. The middle precious tower is the tomb of Her Eminence Pham Hung Ngo. The last precious tower is the tomb of Her Eminence Ho Hung Lu. The Great Divine Temple is dedicated to the worship of God the Father and divine beings. The Holy Mother Temple is dedicated to the worship of Buddha Mother or Venerable Mother Goddess. In some cultures, goddesses are associated with earth, motherhood, love. In other cultures, goddesses also rule over war, death, destruction, as well as creation, healing, compassion, and life. They may be the focus of religious worship or reverence. Artistic depictions of goddesses are common in the cultures who honor them. We look at the Supreme Being as having the force of enlightenment and civilization, but the mechanism of the creation of the universe, such as the process of the creation of humans on the world, comes from the union of yin and yang. Thus, this is the process of making humanity. Therefore, human beings called both the Supreme Being and the Holy Mother as Great Merciful Father and Great Merciful Mother. Against this macrocosmic family, humanity has the chance to reflect this in their earthly or microcosmic families. When Gaodaists pray, they make reference to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Father, Mother, humanity. The Supreme Being manifests as the Buddha, and the Holy Mother is a symbol of the Dharma. If there was a Supreme Being, but there was no Holy Mother, then there would be nothing in this world that would be visible or experienced. The human beings wake up the saga. As one passes down Pham Ho Phat Boulevard from the Great Divine Temple to the Holy Mother Temple, we will see some dignitaries' offices. Next to the office of His Holiness Ho Phat is the Temple of Gratitude. This Temple of Gratitude was renovated and used as a temporary temple for the worship of the Holy Mother. In future, the Holy Mother Temple will be built a specified dedicated temple to the Holy Mother outside the boundary area of the Holy See. At the front of the temple is a significant banner pole. Around the temple itself, there are 91 bas-relief scenes describing such human attributes as filial piety, faithfulness, compassion, righteousness, and the story of many of the divine beings. These illustrations bring alive the scriptural dimensions of the building. Most particularly is a set of images known as the 24 examples of filial piety. These 24 examples are famous throughout East Asia, explaining extraordinary tales of children's devotion to their parents' care and comfort. When we enter from the front of the temple, we come to a vestibule area terminated by a wall. The wall is decorated by a 5-star lantern. Either side of the lantern are 2 columns of Chinese characters, which translates as, "The 8 souls created the universe and transformed all beings. All these visible things follow the way. There is only one invisible spirit that is master of the heart-mind, who, utilizing the law of love, has arranged all beings into their various levels." The nave of the temple is divided in its interior in 8 sections or bays. These sections are marked off by columns and arcs in the roof. The 8 sections of the temple represent the palace of the 8-sided altar, the Holy Mother, and the heavenly realm. On each side of the columns of the main worshipping area, there are yellow boards with 3 Chinese characters reading, "The palace of the 8-sided." The first section is where the choir stands to chant prayers. There is also usually a low table here for musicians. The 6 sections. Each side has the holder of 8 staffs, flanked by 2 ceremonial parasols. The front yellow curtain is a carved canopy. At the very top is a carving of the female phoenix, which is the special vehicle of the Holy Mother. Also surrounding this scene are carvings of the emblems of the 9 female Buddhas, as we noted above in our description of the altar. The main image at the back wall of the space is a colorful depiction of the Holy Mother, accompanied by the 9 female Buddhas and 4 celestial attendants. They all ride on the back of a blue phoenix with its wings outstretched, ready to land. Riding on the back of the blue phoenix, we have the Holy Mother modeled in the center. At the very back of this group are 4 celestial attendants. On her left and right are the 9 female Buddhas. Their hands are holding treasures of the Dharma. The first female Buddha is wearing a robe of blue. In her hand she holds a flute. The second, also wearing a blue robe and holding an incense burner. The third, again wearing a blue robe, her hands are holding a long tube. The 4th female Buddha, dressed in red, is holding a golden name board. The 5th female Buddha, also wearing red, grasps a wand of contentment. The 6th female Buddha, robed in red and sitting on the left, carries a banner of wandering freedom. The 7th female Buddha, wearing a robe of yellow, bears a lotus flower. The 8th female Buddha is dressed in yellow and holds a symbolic basket of flowers. Finally, the 9th female Buddha is dressed in blue and holding a flute. Underneath the tableau of statues is the altar dedicated to the Holy Mother and those spirits who accompany her. This is dominated by the nameplate to the Holy Mother, using the Chinese characters from top to bottom. On the altar, the layout of various objects consists of offering, flowers, fruit, wine, tea, candles, and incense, in a similar way to the altar in the Great Divine Temple. Looking at the Holy Mother, to your right and underneath her, there is a statue of the Immortal Damphung Sao. Standing straight, he is holding his 2 open hands to his forehead, waiting to receive the 4 peaches of immortality, which were given by the Holy Mother to the Emperor Wu. In the courtyard of this pagoda is a statue of His Holiness Tung Pham, who is holding the fan of exteriorization. He is kneeling with his face uplifted, paying respect to the Holy Mother. To the spectators' right, or on the male side of the temple, there is an altar table for the male saints who, through a life of sacrifices, is deified into the saint after dead. To the spectators' left, or on the female side of the temple, there is an altar table for the female saints. Behind the main altar area, there is an altar table of 3 gods. These 3 gods are famous in East Asian culture to denote the 3 attributes of good life: happiness, prosperity, and longevity. The daily worship, which is held in the Holy Mother temples. The rites are in the same way as at the Divine Temple, except the rite of the offering to the Holy Mother and the 9 female Buddhas. When attending a ceremony or any service at the Holy Mother, everyone wears white robes as normal believer, whether they are high dignitaries or not. Every year on the 15th day of the 8th month, the lunar calendar, in the Temple of Gratitude, the Sacerdotal Council organizes the ritual of the Haoying Yujigu. At the front and on either side of this temple, the council sets up a number of canopies. Here, local organizations put on various displays that represent stories about the religion, the Holy Mother, and her female Buddha companions. The 15th day of the 8th month also includes a great ceremony of offering to the Holy Mother, which is based on the encounter between the Mao and the Emperor Wu of the Chinese Han Dynasty. This event is enlivened by a number of carriages that are replete with flowers that make processions around the precincts of the Holy See. There are numerous dragon horse dances as well as dances from the 4 sacred animals: the dragon, the unicorn, the turtle, and the phoenix, and their own dances. Additionally, there is a dance of a very long dragon whose body is bedecked with incense, as well as additional dances by turtles and phoenixes together. Between the carriages full of flowers is the main float that carries the images of the Holy Mother and the 9 female immortals. This carriage leads the procession. The ceremony that celebrates the Haoying Yujigung is held in the main hall of the Temple of Gratitude and starts at 10 p.m. on the evening of the 15th day of the 8th month. His Holiness Hofat explained the details of the banquet on the 15th day of the 8th month in the year of the cat, 1951. All the children of the Supreme Being know we practice the way, and the most essential thing from this action is the attainment of liberation. That is, to find a way to return to our spiritual origins. All the original souls in the universe arise from the authority of the Supreme Being, who charged the Holy Mother with the creation of the 8 levels of souls, which are material, plant, animal, human, genies, saints, immortals, and Buddhas. Amongst these 8 levels of souls that appear at the golden basin of Buddha Mother, do so according to the ultimate law of the Supreme Being, so that they can progress gradually and forever. The banquet of the Holy Mother is the organ for attaining the way on this planet Earth. The Holy Mother and the 9 female Buddhas, which have ascended to have a great meeting with the dignitaries of the religion who recited poems and taught us the way. That is the meeting of the Immortals on the earthly world. Today, because of the Third Universal Amnesty, the Holy Mother and 9 female Immortals, following the order of the Supreme Being, descend to the earthly world to organize the banquet of the Holy Mother at the Holy Mother Temple for all the children who come to unite here. The Holy Mother blesses all her children there to make the hearts and minds of her children feel encouraged, feel positive in their journey of progression back to the Holy Mother. Gaodaists are instructed in their duties and responsibilities to self, family, country, society, and humanity, other religious denominations. They also are taught to believe in the laws of evolution, the doctrine of reincarnation or re-embodiment, doctrine of karma, law of cause and effect, in divine justice, and in the occult realm of spirits. Gaodaists worship and adore God the Father, the Holy Mother, and the divine beings, and they venerate superior spirits and worship ancestors.